Now I'd like to move on to the main show here, which is our heroes. And I have the real honor to introduce Susan Schwartz. She is the president of Friends of Five Creeks. It's an all-volunteer citizen group that helps care for creeks and watersheds throughout the East Bay, largely through hands-on work. Susan has been president for 27 years and is a fixture in East Bay conservation. Susan's life is, and it appears has always been, guided by service. She was a journalist in her early days, starting out in Alaska, then working at the Seattle Times, becoming an editor with Knight Ridder. And I'm here to tell you that journalism is a service. So thank you, Susan. She and her spouse raised 2 kids in Berkeley. All the parents and grandparents here know raising kids is a service. And in doing that, she involved her kids in organizing a community garden, caring for a part of Cordonices Creek in Berkeley. And I want to personally thank you, Susan, because that is where my kid grew up playing in a creek, is in Cordonices. In her own words, Susan says she has been incredibly lucky. But today, we are here to acknowledge how incredibly lucky all of us are to have Susan contributing to East Bay conservation through her speaking up, getting out, and being fully engaged in the hands-on work of caring for place. So it is my honor on behalf of Bay Nature to present our 2025 Community Hero Award to Susan Schwartz.
Thank you so much. Mulling over what to say here, I asked some people what they thought Friends of Five Creeks could contribute over these 29 years, since the group was founded by Sonia Wadman, an AmeriCorps volunteer hired by the city of Albany back in the mid-90s heyday of reviving urban creeks. I came along by chance when Sonia was headed for graduate school. By the way, she now runs a prominent land trust in New England. My children no longer needed so much of my time, and the rest of the story is way too complicated to even begin. But big parts of what I see as our strength have been openness to opportunities and developing the ideas of others. Here's an example. Friends of Five Creeks really became an effective organization because Todd Jersey, a local architect and fabulous cheerleader, persuaded me that in just a few weekends, we could build a bridge railing at Cordonices Creek on the Lonely Greenway, and he would design it for free. Well, it took a lot more than a few weekends, but we cut the pavement and tied the rebar and poured the concrete, and you can go see it. Along the way, Todd noticed that there were trout in the creek, and I really didn't believe him. These turned out to include steelhead. Protecting them is still a big part of what we try to do. Their fate is highly uncertain in our only local trout stream. This has been a big, messy group effort by neighbors, firms, students, and a board that all got their hands dirty. I wish, and I apologize that I can't acknowledge them all. The greatest joys have been when people who might never meet in daily life come together and do something. And conversely, my biggest mistakes have all been when I tried to impose my solutions. None of us has answers. I see Friends of Five Creeks as one of many streamlets that flowed from the vision and political groundwork of Doug Wolf, Gary Mason, Carol Schemmerling, Ann Riley in the Urban Creeks Council in 1980s Berkeley and Richmond. The waves they made reached Napa's revitalized downtown that no longer floods, 9 Mile River unearthed from a slag heap in Pittsburgh, and a freeway replaced by a park-flanked river in Seoul, South Korea, and many more. Now here at home, these pioneers built a framework of creek policies and grants to support their dream of creeks as urban green threads in the urban fabric. Now they, though, were reviving ideas of illustrious planners, hired and widely disregarded in California's boom and bust growth after the gold rush. Very few ideas are new. Friends of Five Creeks has had a lot of both fun and joy. In our less glamorous role, we have been the unpaid janitors in more or less natural areas that had become unwelcoming or dangerous. I see us as helping out and sometimes speaking out where visions met harsh reality. Harsh reality includes projects undertaken based on a few truths without understanding the complexities of nature or people. It includes our cumbersome, costly, and ultimately irresponsible scaffold of grants, consultants, and regulations. It includes failure to recognize maintenance needs and costs, as well as democracy's shifts in fashion and priorities. It includes urban complications, from thoughtless litter to our failures with mental illness and homelessness, and now a fast-changing world of drought, deluges, and devastating fires. In our role as skeptical janitors, success is when areas welcome people and a reasonable diversity of native plants and wildlife. It's when large entities or individuals or groups take over, providing affordable maintenance. It's also a society that cultivates opportunities for people to contribute, work together, and carry out their positive ideas far beyond making comments or donating money, as important as those are. Our social capital and democracy need this. So getting back to where I started, what have we contributed? Some places where we've worked are now reasonably stable and welcoming urban oases. You can stroll Lower Surrey Creek or Berkeley's Little Mortar Rock Park, a gem of native plant biodiversity and human use. Shorebird Park's bay shore is no longer blocked off by brush. And on a larger scale, French broom is no longer the most visible plant in large parts of Tilden Regional Park's most popular areas. After our early, really big work parties in the North Basin Strip, John Kenny from our board and a handful of people have transformed that shoreline into a colorful welter of native plants that should be a lab for what is possible on the other garbage dumps lining the bay shore. Local groups are taking over in the El Cerrito Hillside Natural Area, 100 acres of fire-prone nature, where we controlled a powder keg of broom over more than a decade, but that is not finished. A couple of independents, Alfredo Chinquanco and Pavel Moldenhauer, take responsibility and find creative solutions for much of Codornices Creek west of San Pablo, along with Albany's wildlands manager, Margot Cunningham, and interns from disadvantaged backgrounds. Now, all this comes with failure. Like everybody who's done this for a while, we have abandoned projects. We've had years of work wiped out and our hearts broken. Currently, storms, erosion, and salt intrusion are destroying what we thought we had achieved at the mouth of Strawberry Creek in East Shore State Park. But physical places may not be our most important contributions. One of our board members suggested it might be awareness of plants we label invasives. There is no such thing as a bad plant. But pretty little Algerian sea lavender sneaks in under other salt marsh dwellers and overwhelms them. Bindweed and Cape ivy wall off creeks and hog the soil and light. And this is not to mention the plants that become tinder or torches. Of course, this is part of the broad stream of effort from the California Invasive Plant Council down to what I'll call the leprechauns, the people who work close to a loan, doing probably more than you know to rein in plants that don't play well with others in our public places. Now, many have observed that volunteers looking at reporting can be more valuable than their immediate task. For example, before I joined Friends of Five Creeks, a grad student pioneered water quality monitoring on Cerrito Creek. When they saw the gunk flush down Cerrito Creek, that led to significant changes in mud practices, not the only time we've done that. Like a lot of what was done in the big early wave of creek groups, those methods and materials are now deprecated, outlawed, or fenced off with expensive permits. I used to lead a lot of nature walks, from wild edibles to king tides. King tides are something we pioneered, but there are lots more walks now, nature among them. We still do a fair amount of citizen science, using frameworks not ideal for the purpose, to build baseline data for climate change. It's hard to know if this will have any ultimate value. We took over Cindy Spring's wonderful talk series when she aged out and ran it for 6 years until COVID shut it down. I like to think that Bay Nature talks are now carrying that torch far and wide with post-COVID technology. Lacking evidence, I take on faith that if we influence for good those thousands of volunteers getting down and dirty in nature, what is the value of planting a plant with your children? Of working your office frustrations on the weeds? Of us old folks getting exercise and company and still achieving? I joke that the most important thing we do is teach young folks to use tools. I am deeply grateful to the Scout leaders and blue-collar workers who taught me the very little I know about those things. People of all kinds want to contribute, and our democracy needs them to do this. It's important that people come together independently, work out how to do something, and get it done. Let's cultivate ways for them to do it. Thank you.